Joe Rogan has become one of the most hated faces in the MMA community in the last 3 to 5 years, and as far as I'm concerned, hating on Joe Rogan is quite possibly the most nonsensical thing an MMA fan could do. Before I explain why Joe Rogan actually has a net positive impact to the sport, first I'm going to address the hate and go through some of the negative posts about him, kind of show you what people are saying. This is the first piece. I mean, this post alone encapsulates a majority of MMA fans that have a disdain towards Rogan. You can read this one here. We need to remove Joe Rogan from UFC pay-per-view cards. UFC 317 was worse off with him on it. Okay, that's not true, but let's keep reading. His in-fight commentary is redundant and repetitive. Nice low kick. Oh, he's hurt. Okay, so when someone gets rocked, you just want him to sit there. Fair enough. He's extremely casual when it comes to modern day UFC. Admitted to Sandhagen that he's never heard of Nazim Sadikov before #UFC Baku. Oh, Lord have mercy. He hasn't heard of Nazim Sadikov. God forbid a person on the face of the earth hasn't heard of him. Asked the most chat GPT-esque questions in the post-fight interview. Joshua Van, you just shocked the world. Ilia Topuria, you just shocked the world. Alexandre Pantoja, you just shocked the world. You said ask a question. Those are all statements. Not a single one of those is a question. And again, what do you want him to say? Do you want him to give a poetic speech? Or do you want him to ask the fighter about the fight and what happened? Like, I don't know what you expect. Let's see, number 4 here. Tries to book fights based on apparent hype. Meanwhile, he has no idea what the current landscape of the UFC is. Having Paddy face off with Ilya when Paddy's only ranked win is against Michael Chandler. Hey, doofus, Ilia Topuria wanted Paddy to be brought into the cage, first of all. Second of all, this is literally one of the biggest fights the UFC could make right now, given the past between Paddy Pimblett and Ilia Topuria. So, while it's not the most deserved fight, it wouldn't be a crazy matchup to make. Because, like I said, given the past, Charles Oliveira got a title shot off Chandler, but if Paddy Pimblett does it, someone who actually has a history with Ilia Topuria and is a young prime fighter, if he does it, then it's a war crime. He TKO'd Chandler and brutally finished him. Oliveira went 5 rounds and almost got knocked out. So, but yeah, Paddy does it. It's ridiculous. Some of these I can't tell if it's rage bait or they're just negative people. But we can go to another one. Laura Sanko over Joe Rogan on UFC commentary by far. This one's insane. At least Revive the West has a good understanding of what's going on and called out Nate Dillon's awful take. But then you got freaking Chambermaid. That's always been the case. Okay, buddy. Yeah, because everyone knows you'd rather... I'm not even going to get into it. That's just an awful take. And if you can't see why that's an awful take, I don't know what to tell you. And then when he's not on the card and he's not announcing the fights, people are complaining about that too. Felder is really good, but Baldy not being there for Poirier's retirement, I thought everyone was just saying how bad of a commentator he is. Now they are sad that he's not going to be there for a fight. Why would that be the case? I thought everyone couldn't stand his repetitive commentary. Why are people upset that he's not going to be there? Here's another example. Too bad he won't be calling Dustin's retirement fight. How bad this card must be for Joe Rogan to skip it, even though it's held only 500 miles away from Austin. I don't know what Greasy Monkey's talking about, but people are upset about the fact that he's not going to be there. Here's another one. And another. And another. Which, bro, pulled out. What do you mean pulled out? What is it? Was he supposed to fight on the card? I don't think he was ever in, so I don't know how he could have pulled out. But look, people are not happy that he's not going to be there. And like I said, I thought that's exactly what everyone wanted, Joe Rogan to not be commentating any more fights, because he's the worst ever, right? But those are some tweets showing the clear disdain that people have for Joe Rogan and some of the reasons they think so. But I'm here to tell you, Joe Rogan is one of the biggest net positives for the UFC in the entirety of the sport's history. I mean, I can go on and on about reasons. For starters, he has the biggest podcast in the world and is one of the biggest drivers to UFC stardom there is. Other than McGregor and Ronda Rousey, all these other big stars, a lot of people get funneled into the UFC through Joe Rogan. He's part of the reason the sport is as big as it is. He's on this podcast talking to the President of the United States, whether you like him or not, about UFC. He's talking to all his guests about UFC. He is growing it from his podcast, which again is the biggest in the world. So that alone, you should have some respect for him making the sport a legitimate sport and turning it into the powerhouse that it is today. And then another reason, Joe Rogan's a colored commentator. He's not John Anik that's supposed to tell you everything about the fighters. He is a colored commentator. He adds color to the broadcast. And he adds some context if there's a position going on, which he is experienced in martial arts. An amazing Taekwondo background, amazing kickboxing, BJJ black belt. So that's 3 different martial arts that he's experienced in. So I think he has somewhat of a clue what he's talking about, not to mention all the hundreds, if not thousands, of fighters he's talked to over the years, tens of thousands, fighters, coaches, all these people he's talked to. But you're going to sit here and say he has no clue what he's talking about? He has a better understanding about MMA than 99% of MMA fans. His job as the colored commentator isn't strictly to tell you facts about fighters. Again, he adds color. His reactions are legendary. There are memes with hundreds of millions, billions of views of Joe Rogan's reactions in the commentary booth. I mean, he takes it up a whole nother notch when he is in the commentary booth. He makes the viewing experience way more enjoyable and adds a ton of hype just there alone with his reactions. And while he may not know some fighters and he may not be as into the sport as he once was, his name value and his reactions alone, I think, are plenty. Like, you can leave the fighter research to John Anik. Joe Rogan is literally taking these UFC fighters and growing them into stars as well by putting them on his podcast. He has a whole segment on his podcast where he just interviews fighters. A whole MMA thing builds these guys and makes them bigger stars. And what does that do for the sport? Well, it builds hype. It brings eyes. It adds legitimacy. Like, who wouldn't want the sport that they love to be one of the biggest sports in the country? Like, imagine if the UFC was on the level of the NFL. And in some cases, it can be. Some of the cards are just as big, if not bigger, than an NFL playoff game or an MLB game, for sure. But why would you not want your sport, the sport you love, to be on that level? One of the best ways to get it to that level is to have people like Joe Rogan in the space promoting this thing. And I just don't understand why people are so ignorant and that they can't see the positive impact Joe Rogan has to the sport and has provided to the sport. He's been there since the beginning. He did it for free, and people will still rag on him because, oh, he didn't know freaking Nurmagomedov Rakhmonov or something. Like, give him a break. He does other stuff on the side too, you know. He's not strictly a commentator. This isn't his whole life. He does it because he loves it. He doesn't need the money. He adds to the commentary. You cannot tell me that cards are more fun when Joe's not there. That would be a flat out lie. When Joe is there, the cards are better. The quality of the viewing experience is raised and elevated when Joe is in the commentary booth. Turns up and is screaming with these reactions. That makes it more pleasurable to watch. You can't tell me differently. You might not like some of the takes he has, and I agree. Like, fighting on an open basketball court, that's ridiculous. Back of the head shot should be legal. Again, that's ridiculous. But overall, there's no way you cannot look at Joe Rogan and realize that he has had a net positive impact and continues to have a net positive impact on the sport of MMA, specifically the UFC. That was my spiel on Joe Rogan. Just kind of where I think he fits into this whole picture in the UFC at this time. And if you disagree with me, I'd love to know why. But thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.